My manager looked straight at me in the middle of a meeting and said something I will never forget. "Emily, let's be honest. Anyone in this room could do your job." A few people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Someone near the end of the table coughed, but Derek just leaned back like he had said something completely reasonable. Then he added the sentence that made the entire room go quiet. "You're replaceable." What he didn't realize at that moment was that 2 weeks later, the CEO of our biggest client would refuse to approve a multi-million-dollar rollout unless I was the one running it. And that conversation would quietly end Derek's career at our company. I worked as a senior operations analyst at a logistics technology company in Chicago called Northbridge Logistics. We specialized in supply chain analytics for large retail companies. Our systems predicted inventory demand, managed shipment flows, and helped retailers decide how much product to send to each region before it ever reached a store. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was critical. If our forecasting models failed, stores ran out of products. When that happened, executives started asking questions very quickly. I had been working at Northbridge for almost 5 years. I joined right after graduate school as a junior analyst and slowly worked my way up. I spent countless late nights building predictive models, debugging data pipelines, and sitting in conference calls with warehouse managers, trying to explain why a truck full of winter coats was heading to Florida in July. Over time, I became the lead specialist for one of our most important systems, the predictive inventory model used by several national retail chains. One of those clients was Harrington Retail Group. Harrington had hundreds of stores across the United States, and their logistics operation depended heavily on our forecasting software. Over the years, I had worked closely with their operations team, walking them through system upgrades and helping them interpret the data our models generated. They trusted me, which is why everything that happened next was so strange. It started when our department got a new director. His name was Derek Collins. Derek transferred from another regional office and took over our analytics division. On paper, he looked impressive. MBA from a prestigious school, strong corporate background, leadership awards from his previous company. In person, he was polished, confident, and very good at sounding like he understood things. But after a few weeks, most of us realized something important. Derek liked the appearance of leadership much more than the actual work. During his first week, he scheduled one-on-one meetings with everyone on the team. When it was my turn, I walked into his office expecting a normal introduction. Instead, Derek spent most of the meeting scanning my resume. 5 years at the same company, he said. Almost, I replied. He nodded slowly. That's a long time to stay in one place. I've worked on several major client systems, I explained. Most of our predictive forecasting models are projects I helped design. Derek gave a polite smile. Well, he said, closing the folder, sometimes fresh leadership brings better efficiency. The comment seemed harmless at the time, but looking back, it was the first hint of what was coming. About a month later, I noticed the first real problem. I had spent 6 months developing a major upgrade to Harrington Retail's forecasting dashboard. The new system improved regional demand predictions and helped their warehouses reduce inventory shortages. It was one of the most complex projects I had worked on. When it came time to present the results to senior leadership, Derek insisted on leading the presentation. That wasn't unusual. Managers usually presented department projects. But as the meeting progressed, something started to feel wrong. Derek clicked through the slides explaining the system architecture. Our team recently developed a new predictive inventory model, he said confidently. Our team. He walked through the forecasting logic, the algorithm structure, the regional demand adjustments, all things I had built. Then someone from finance asked a simple question. Who designed the model? Derek didn't even hesitate. I oversaw the development personally. For a moment, I thought maybe he would clarify, maybe he would mention the analytics team, or at least my name. But he didn't. The meeting ended with congratulations from senior leadership, and Derek accepted every single one of them. Afterward, my coworker Jenna caught up with me in the hallway. Emily, that was literally your entire project, she said. I know. Are you going to say something? I hesitated. Derek had only been there a few weeks. Starting a conflict with a new director felt risky, so I convinced myself it was just one awkward moment. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Over the next few months, Derek developed a pattern. If something went well, he presented it as a leadership success. If something went wrong, he looked for someone else to blame. Gradually, those problems started pointing toward me. During meetings, he began interrupting my explanations. "Let's simplify this," he would say. Or, "Maybe we're overcomplicating things." Sometimes the comments were even more pointed. One afternoon, while I was presenting a demand forecast report, Derek cut me off halfway through. "Not everyone here needs a data science lecture," he said lightly. A few people looked down at their laptops. I finished the presentation, but the atmosphere had already changed. Derek wasn't just criticizing my work. He was slowly undermining my credibility. The moment that finally crossed the line happened during a department staffing discussion. Our team had been working long hours to handle several new retail clients. One of the analysts suggested we might need another forecasting specialist to keep up with the workload. Derek leaned back in his chair. "If someone here can't handle the workload," he said casually, "we can always hire someone new." Then he looked directly at me. "Anyone can run these systems." The room went quiet. Derek shrugged. "You're replaceable, Emily." No one said anything after that. The meeting continued like normal, but something about that moment stuck with me, because Derek clearly believed it. He thought the system was simple, he thought my job was easy, and he assumed anyone could step in and take over. What he didn't understand was that my role wasn't just writing reports. For years, I had been the primary technical contact for several major clients, including Harrington Retail. Their operations team trusted me because I had personally walked them through the forecasting system multiple times. Even their CEO had joined those calls occasionally. Derek never bothered to learn that. 2 weeks after the replaceable comment, Derek made a decision that would ultimately destroy his credibility. Harrington Retail was preparing for its annual nationwide inventory rollout. It was one of the most complex logistics events of the year. Hundreds of stores, thousands of shipments. Our forecasting model played a critical role in planning those shipments. Normally, I led the rollout configuration calls with Harrington's operations team, but during our planning meeting, Derek announced something different. "I'll be handling the executive communication for this rollout," he said. Then he glanced at me. "Emily, you can focus on documentation." "Assist again." I kept my voice calm. "I usually manage the configuration during the rollout calls." Derek smiled politely. "If the documentation is clear, anyone should be able to run the system." That was the moment I stopped arguing. Instead, I did exactly what he asked. I prepared the documentation, step-by-step guides, system diagrams, technical summaries, everything he requested. But there were dozens of small calibration adjustments that normally happened during the rollout process. Things I usually handled live during the call. Derek never asked about them. And I didn't volunteer the information. The rollout meeting with Harrington's leadership team took place the following Monday. Executives from both companies joined the video call. Derek ran the presentation confidently. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Then one of Harrington's analysts asked a question. "How will the model adjust for regional demand variance during the rollout?" Derek clicked to the next slide. "The system handles that automatically." It didn't. The calibration process required manual adjustments depending on seasonal demand patterns. The analyst frowned slightly. "That's not what Emily explained during the last quarterly review." Derek glanced across the conference table at me. I stayed quiet. "Well," Derek said quickly, "Emily helped with documentation, but the system architecture falls under my department." Another executive leaned forward. "So you'll be configuring the rollout today?" "Yes," Derek said confidently. Then another voice joined the call. Calm, authoritative. The CEO of Harrington Retail had just entered the meeting. "Interesting," he said. Derek straightened. "Good afternoon," the CEO continued, "because Emily is the one who built the forecasting model." The entire room went silent. Derek blinked. "I'm sorry?" "We specifically asked for Emily to be part of these rollout calls," the CEO said. "She's the only person who has walked our team through the calibration process correctly. Then he asked the question that changed everything. Emily, are you overseeing the rollout configuration today? Every eye in the room turned toward me. I chose my words carefully. I wasn't assigned that responsibility this time. There was a long pause. Then the CEO spoke again. If Emily isn't configuring the rollout, I'm not comfortable approving it. The statement landed like a hammer. Because without Harrington's approval, the entire deployment had to stop, and delaying the rollout would cost millions. Within an hour, Northbridge's executive leadership joined an emergency meeting. Our CEO listened quietly while Derek tried to explain the situation. Something about restructuring responsibilities, delegation, leadership oversight? Then our CEO asked a very simple question. Why was the primary developer of the forecasting system removed from the rollout process? Derek didn't have a good answer, because the real reason was obvious. He underestimated the wrong person. By the end of that meeting, the decision was made. I was reinstated as the lead technical contact for Harrington's rollout. Derek was removed from the project entirely. Once the calibration process was completed, the deployment went smoothly. Harrington approved the rollout later that day. A few weeks later, HR announced that Derek would be transitioning into another role within the company. He left shortly after. No dramatic confrontation, no big announcement, just a quiet disappearance from the organization chart. A few months later, our CEO stopped by my desk after a quarterly review meeting. He smiled and said something I still remember. Good employees aren't replaceable, he said. Bad managers are. I stayed at Northbridge for another year before moving on to a better opportunity, but I never forgot that meeting, because Derek was right about one thing. In corporate life, people often think others are replaceable, but sometimes the person who says it ends up being the easiest one to replace.